Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my podcast, to Just Listen to One podcast. As you can tell from the title, I am going to be talking about John Wayne Gacy, people know him as, Pogo the Clown, and also Patches the Clown and Happy Clown are like the top three other names that he has been called, so you guys know. So I'm going to be talking about a few things about him. John was often called Killer Clown, was one of the worst serial killers in the U.S. history, murdering at least 33 teenage boys and young men. Who is John Wayne Gacy? John Wayne is a serial killer and rapist who had murdered at least 33 teenage boys and young men in Cook County, Illinois. Burying most under his house, sometimes known as the Killer Clown for his habit of dressing in a clown costume and makeup. He had an abusive childhood and struggled with homosexuality. He committed all the murders in his Norwood Park home, luxury his victims with the promise of construction work or some other ruse, then sexually assaulting and tormenting before killing them, usually by stranger. I can't pronounce that word. He was arrested in 1979, and following year he was convicted of 33 murders. He was extradited in 1994. Quick little facts about him. Full name is John Wayne Gacy. Born March 17th, 1942. He died in May 10th, 1997. His birthplace is in Chicago. His spouses were Marilyn Mayers in 1964 through 1969 and Carol Hoff in 1972 to 1976. His children names are Michael and Christine. His childhood, we're going to go under that, and John was born on March 17th, 1947 in Chicago to John Stanley Grace and Martin Eileen Robinson. His father was an auto repair machinist and World War I veteran, struggled with alcoholism and beat John and his two sisters with a zipper strap if they were previous to have misbehaved. John's father frequently belittled him and calling him stupid and comparing him to his sisters, according to John and Me, The True Story of John Wayne Gacy by Barry E. I don't know how to pronounce the last name, but John's psychosexual history began between the ages of 6 and 10, when a teenage daughter of one of his mother's friends reportedly undressed and played with him, according to Killer Clown: The John Wayne Gacy Murders by Terry Sullivan. Gacy was molested at a young age by a family friend and a contractor between the ages of 10 and 12. He and a friend were accused of sexually fondling a young girl, according to Sullivan. A sickly, overweight, uncoordinated child, he was unable to perform at sports or bonds with children at his own age, according to John Wayne Gacy, Defending a Monster by Sam Amorate and Danny Broderick. He suffered alienation, something at school, unable to play with other children due to congenital heart condition that was locked upon his father as another failing. He experienced frequently seizures and blackouts as a teen and regularly in out of hospitals, though his father accused him of faking it for attention. He later realized he was attracted to men and experienced great turmoil over his sexuality. Career and his family. The debate not graduating from high school. He attended and graduated from Northwestern Business College in Chicago, then worked as a salesman manager at a shoe company. In 1964, he met and became engaged to Marilyn Mayers, whose father owned 3 KFC restaurants in Ohio. He relocated there to manage the restaurants, and he and Mayers had 2 children together, according to Buried Dreams Inside the Mind of a from a Killer by Tim Cahill and Ross Ewing. John became a self-made building constructor and Democrat percent captain in Chicago suburbs in the 1970s. Later, he speculated his political environment might have been an attempt to antagonize his father, who mocked his interest in politics. And maybe it was an getaway experience, he said, according to Buried Dreams. I was always looking for acceptance because my dad made me feel I was never good enough. Well liked his community, he organized a culture gathering and he was active in politics, organizations, and the JC's civic group. John later called his happiest period of his life, and he even earned much convicted praise from his father, who had been in the wrong about him. Back then, I was thinking running for alderman, he said, according to Buried Dreams. After that, I wanted to go for a mayor, and if that worked, I was going to run for state senate. I didn't see any limits. He was a member of Chicago area Jolly Joker Clown Club and frequently performed in clown attire and makeup at children's parties, charities, fundraisers, and other events as he altered ego Pugo the Clown, or Matches the Clown. Years later, during the conversation with detectives while he was under surveillance, he discussed his work as the Clown, remarking, "Clowns can get away with murder." For sexual assaults and arrests. In 1968, he was accused of sexually assaulting a teenage boy and attempted assault another. He vehemently denied these statements, and some community members believe him over the victim. He pursued one of his employees to assault the victim in unsuccessful attempts to stop from testifying, according to Killer Clown. He was convicted and served in a 10-year prison sentence, after which his wife divorced him and received full custody of their children. A model prisoner, he was released on parole in the summer of 1970 after serving 18 months of his sentence. However, he was arrested again following year. Another teen claimed he lured him into his car and drove to his house, where he tried to force him having sex, according to John Wayne Gacy, defending a monster. The charges were dropped when the boy didn't appear during the trial. With financial assistance from his mother, Gacy bought a house on 8213 West Somerdale Avenue in Northwood Park, where all of his furniture murders would take place, according to Buried Dreams. In 1971, he started a contracts business called PDM Constructors, which grew rapidly and became financially successful. Also that year, he also became engaged to Carol Hoof, who he briefly dated in high school. The two were married in 1972. Most of his employees at PDM Contractors were high school students and young men who would position for sex, sometimes under the threat of violence. Nevertheless, he kept up a public front as a community man, hosting summer parties that were popular, well attended, according to Buried Dreams. About his victims now. He committed his first known murder in January 1972 after luring a 16-year-old Timothy McCoy to his house for sex. The next morning, he saw McCoy standing in the bathroom doorway with a knife and rushed to attack him, wresting the knife away and stabbing him to death. Afterwards, he desperately recognized that he hadn't been attacking or threatening him, but rather he was holding the knife because he just made them breakfast. Nevertheless, he discovered he received sexual gratification for killing McCoy, and later said, "That's when I realized death was an ultimate thrill," according to Buried Dreams. Another of his victims was John Butchork, an 18-year-old PDM employee whom John lured to his house with a promise to discuss overdue pay. Once there, he gave him alcohol, tricked him into handcuffs on, and strangled him, according to the man Who Killed Boys, the John Wayne Gacy Jr. story by Clifford L. Lindecker. The use of handcuffs became a frequent method for him to hold, who would sometimes tell his victims he was showing them a magic trick. But Krovich parents were suspicious of John and called the police more than 100 times, arguing them to investigate him farther, according to Lindecker. By the middle of the 1970s, two more young men accused him of rape, and he was questioned by the police about the disappearance of others. He referred to this period of his life as his crusting years. When he committed most of his murders, most of his victims were buried on the property, with multiple placed in the common grave underneath his crawl space. One of the victims, a 17-year-old PDM employee named Georgie Godzik, told his family that John had earlier ordered him a dig trench in the crawl space of his home. John later told police he arranged this work to create a space for graves, according to John Wayne Gacy defending a monster. After Godzik went missing, his family contacted John, who told them that he had confided to him that he planned to run away from home. John killed multiple more victims during this time period. One he left alive was Robert Donling, a 19 college student he abducted from Chicago's bus stop. After bringing him to his house, John raped and tortured him, dunking his head repeatedly in the bathtub until he passed out, and performing fake executions with a gun loaded with blank. Donnelly was in much pain. He begged John to kill him, but John let him go and warned him to not tell anybody. Donnelly reported him to the police. However, when officers investigated, John said it was consensual sex slavery encounter, and the police believed him, according to Buried Dreams. John killed another victim a month later. Now we're going to talk about the investigation arrest. By 1978, John Crawled Space had no more spaces for bodies, according to Killer Clown, and he started to dispose of his victims in the Des Plaines River on a bridge off Interstate 55. On December 11th, 1978, 15-year-old Robert Pett went missing after telling his mother he was going to meet John to discuss a potential construction job. Robert family filed a missing report with the police, which led to a search of John's house in Norway Park. Authorities discovered multiple suspects items there, including police bags, a pistol, needles, pornographic films, and items that they later learned belongs to some of John's victims. After allegedly period of police investigations, police discovers a recent receipt in John's house that had belonged to Peast, conducting John's claim that had no contact with him that day when he was missing, according to John Wayne Gacy defending a monster. His results in further searches of John's house eventually led to the discovery of multiple trents filled with human remains in the crowded space beneath his house. John eventually confessed to killing about 30 people. John's house. In 1977, months after his arrest, his house at 8213 West Summerdale Avenue in Norwood Park was dismantled in an effort to find more evidence. The following year, the house and all structures on his property were demolished, and a new house was eventually built on the property. According to one of the workers involved in the demolition of his house, if Devils was alive, he'd live here. About his trial and conviction, John's trial began on February 6, 1980, with John's having confession to the crimes. The arguments were found on whether he could be declared insane and thus remitted to the state of mental facility. He spent hundreds of hours with doctors at Menard Correctional Center in Chester, and underwent a series of psychologist tests according to buried dreams. He tried to argue he had multiple personality disorders and that his mind was split between personalities of character, clown, politician, and an officer named Bad Jack. He claimed Bad Jack hated homosexuality and review main prostitutes and some of his victims as scum, weak, stupid, and degraded, according to buried dreams. He pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, and he went to trial on 33 murder charges. The prosecution argued he was sane and control of his actions, pointing the elaborate steps he took both prepared for the consult of his murders. These were certainly the acts of man capable of prediction, acting on his own actions, interest under duress, and recollecting details from his criminal activities, said Chief Prosecutor William Conk, according to Killer Clown. Mental health professionals testify on both sides about Gary's mental state. On March 12, 1980, after a short journey deliberation, he was found guilty, committed 33 murders, and he became known as the most ruthless serial killers in American history. John was imprisoned at the Mandrel Correlation Center in Chester for 14 years, appealing the sentence and offering statements on the murders and interviews. Although he had previously confessed, he later denied being guilty of the charges. He had a 900 telephone number set up with a 12-minute recording statements declaring his innocence. While at Menard, he took up study of visual arts, especially painting. Painting were shown to a public visa at an exhibition at a Chicago gallery. Many of his paintings depict John as Pogo the Clown. In 2017, Mulk's actions in Shrewsbury, United Kingdom, multiple of his artworks, as well as a crime scene picture from his trial. His death and last words. After the U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear John's final appeal in October 1993, an execution date was set for May 10th, 1994 at the State of Correlation Center in Crest Hills. Before his death, he said the victim's family could get no comfort from his death and accused the state of murdering him. His last words were reportedly, "Kiss my, but the prosecutors tried the case, attended his said Gary didn't speak. In his final moments, he was executed by legal lethal injection. In the years since John's arrest, there have been lingering concerns that John might have been responsible for deaths of other people whose bodies have not been found yet. And the police uncovered human remains in John's house in 1978. 8 bodies couldn't be identified. In July 2017, Cook County authorized use DNA evidence to clarify one of these unidentified victims as a 16-year-old James Bryan Hacketson, who've been reported missing since 1976. In October 2020, DNA testing identified another of John's victims as a 21-year-old Francis Wayne Alexander, who disappeared in 1976. Let's go to the next one. 5 recent developments involving serial killer clown John Wayne Gacy. John I can't pronounce that word. Tortured and he murdered at least 33 boys and young men who lured to his home in Cook County between 1972 and 1978. But the effects of his prolific crime spree reveritable to this day. 40 years after the so-called killer clown took his last life, police were still trying to identify 6 of the victims. In July, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children used facial reconstruction techniques to release brand new sketches of the 2 of his prey, both white males, possibly between the ages of 17 and 22. Just that year, DNA helped identify the victims. 24, who's now as James, the 16-year-old from St. Paul, Minnesota, has gone on his home to Chicago the summer of 1976, but never returned. While his family suspect John may have murdered the teen, it took until recently for the late boy's curiosity nephew to set up a motion to proceed the investigation. Eventually discovered that John did in fact kill him. Not all the boys John intercored are dead. However, a Chicago man believes he was almost one of the monster's first murder's victims. In recent interviews with Daily Hurdle, David Maltholt recalled how as a 10-year-old, he was his mom's faction as a reporter in Wisconsin. He was now certain he crossed paths with John, who was just a teenager at the time. It hit me like a ton of bricks, Bolton, now 71, of the realization. I can't prove it, but that was him. John, already displaying clear signs of sadistic personality, forced young boys to measure frogs and sexually molest them. He said if I didn't do what he said, he'll throw me in the lake and drown me, said Bolton. He said people drown all the time. People will think it was an accident. Today, the memories of the possibility John encountered the sear to Bolton memory. I had think of it every day of my life, he said. I wish I could erase it. I'm glad he's dead. For decades now, John chilling history is fanatized true crimes fans, and his creepy artwork provides at least small glimpse into his 20s twisted mind. John, infamous his obsession with clowns, created thousands of paintings and self-portraits, including many depicting his dress up as his alter ego, Pogo, and Patches. His artwork is now so popular, it's even shown cases in auctions and online galleries. One of the clown's masterpieces went under the hammer for $7,500 in the Philippines last spring. This Pego painting were only going about $250 in the early 90s, noted Stephanie, a John art and memorabilia expert. But These days, they can sell as much as $50,000. Not all new developments regarding John's crimes are unappetizing. Some Japanese encounters recently opened. The temporary dining station served twisted on the middle, twisted on the last meal of famous death row inmates naturally. John's choice was featured on the menu, a version of a serial killer final food request of, among other selections on the bucket of KFC chicken, fries, shrimp, and strawberries. John was executed by lethal injections in May 1994 after serving over 14 years in bars, and lore surrounding the killer clown clearly continues developing today. And that is it for this podcast. If you guys enjoyed this podcast, let me know, and I hope to see you next Saturday. Bye.